The unsurpassed, profound, and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us all give rise to the unsurpassed bodhicitta. Next, we will continue our discussion of the ancient Buddhist Udāna Sūtra. The Udāna Sūtra consists of 33 chapters. We have already covered 6 chapters. Today we begin the 7th chapter, the chapter on good conduct, a very important topic. Now, regarding the chapter on good conduct, why is it discussed after the chapter on discipline? The main point is that the attachment mentioned previously must be eliminated. If attachment is not eliminated, it is impossible to uphold the precepts. There are many different kinds of precepts. Their categories are quite numerous, even just at the level of the pratimoksha precepts. The number of precepts is very large. If we sum up all these precepts, it comes down to what we often say, do no evil, practice all good. This is the principle at the heart of it. Therefore, it is discussed here immediately after, the wholesome actions of body, speech, and mind. If we uphold the wholesome actions of body, speech, and mind, then most of the other precepts can be included within this. This is especially true when it comes to the wholesome actions and precepts that are presented here, basically whether monastic or layperson. These are precepts and virtuous practices that both can indeed observe. Although in many places in the ancient Udāna Sūtra, on the surface it appears to be admonishing monks and those who have left their homes with certain specific instructions, but in reality all, including laymen and women, as well as monastic men and women, should be able to uphold and practice this. This is such a Dharma method, therefore this Udāna Sūtra. Truly each chapter seems more important than the one before. One feels, oh, this chapter is also very important. Moreover, the teachings within it seem very simple on the surface, but in fact they contain very profound meaning. And although they seem quite easy to understand, in reality within them there are many wholesome practices we usually cultivate. Sometimes it may seem like if you study this particular sutra very well and thoroughly indeed, you will also become a very good practitioner. Even if you don't understand other things, that's okay. It's just like the words of my perfect teacher. If you study this Dharma thoroughly and deeply, then you should develop into an excellent practitioner in your field. So during the process of learning, everyone should also take it seriously. For any Dharma teaching, or for any matter, if you become interested and realize its importance, then your actual practice of it later on and your interest in it will naturally arise. This is very important. Next, we will proceed to discuss Chapter 7 in detail. Abandon all unwholesome bodily actions, uphold all wholesome bodily actions, guard the body from great faults, and let the body be well and properly tamed. The content we are covering today is relatively simple. In Master Zakai's commentary, there is also not much explanation. Moreover, the meaning is basically extended in the same way for many of the points. It's quite similar to a series of parallel sentences. The content is all interconnected. Once you understand one principle at the very start, many other principles become easier to grasp. So this particular verse was mainly taught while residing in Shravasti. At that time, there were 3 monks living together, among whom one had committed very serious bodily misdeeds, another had committed serious misdeeds through speech, and another one, his mind had committed serious misdeeds. So the Buddha, in response to these situations, addressed these 3 different monastics, providing them with guidance. He then gave the following 3 verses. Also in the Udāna Varga, there is indeed a very similar story to this one. A Brahmin was bitten by a dog and he became quite angry. He wanted to immediately retaliate in various ways. to punish the dog. At that time, his parents advised him not to take an eye for an eye, saying it was unnecessary, but the Brahmin wouldn't listen at all. He then started to firmly tie up the dog, then using sticks and other various things to beat it quite harshly. But in reality, beating it was also a direct result of the anger that arose within him at that time. After his anger arose, he himself began to commit negative actions of body, speech, and mind. These negative actions of body, speech, and mind were actually a very great mistake on his part as well. To treat animals in such a truly disrespectful way, using his body, his speech, and his mind to beat them out of anger, doing this. In fact, in this life he also suffers rebuke from others. In future lives he will fall into the 3 very lower realms of hell, hungry ghosts and animals. Therefore, in response to this, the Buddha taught the following verses. Here, the literal meaning is quite straightforward. For those individuals who uphold the precepts, for those who practice virtuous deeds, the most crucial thing is to guard the 3, body, speech, and mind, to abandon the 3 unwholesome actions, and then practice virtue. This will continue to be discussed later on. So first of all, the very first point is this. What should the body really do? The body should always refrain from all evil actions, actively refraining from evil actions with the body, because sometimes the body commits negative karma. For example, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. These are directly enacted. Sometimes the body itself can become a cause for the accumulation of negative karma. Regarding the body, the Abhidharma Kosha discusses precepts. There are virtuous precepts and non-virtuous precepts. Non-virtuous precepts have an unobservable form, aviññapti rupa. This is something everyone should also know. Unobservable form, aviññapti rupa, appears as though nothing is expressed through our body or speech, yet the Hinayana tradition considers it to be a precept with substance. There are precepts that are either virtuous or non-virtuous. So in reality, non-virtuous precepts are also a kind of negative karma. Therefore, with the body, we should eliminate both obvious and more subtle forms of evil. Conversely, the physical body should practice both obvious and subtle virtuous actions. That is, not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct. Such precepts also possess a virtuous aspect, indeed the true cause and very essence of virtue itself, as well as these virtuous actions of an unobservable form should indeed exist. All of these should be practiced. In this way, when we protect our own bodies, we are actually keeping away from the truly great evils that are often associated with the human body. As a result, the body becomes tamed and well-disciplined, so that in any situation the body will not engage in major acts of killing, stealing, or sexual misconduct, nor, on a smaller scale, commit various kinds of evil deeds. Even our body, when used properly and in accordance with the Dharma, no matter what the situation may be, if we diligently maintain our physical body, then we will not commit major evil deeds. In actual fact, among all bodily misdeeds, from the perspective of Mahayana Buddhism, killing is considered the most serious. Among killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, the gravest is killing. Therefore, if one refrains from killing, indeed this is the most virtuous action one can perform with the body. As stated in Bodhisattva Nagarjuna's treatise on the great perfection of wisdom, among all other offenses, the offense of killing is the most serious. Among all virtues, not killing is the foremost. Of all virtuous deeds, refraining from killing is the highest. Moreover, if we engage in releasing living beings and protecting life in this regard, the merit gained is extremely great. Nowadays, currently, in many places around the globe, even the practice of releasing animals is subject to certain restrictions. Sometimes it is said to be due to environmental protection concerns, and sometimes it is said to be because of environmental pollution issues. In fact, from the perspective of animal protection, every country should place great importance on the protection of life. This should be taken very seriously. Therefore, these significant aspects truly deserve our careful attention. In our own personal lifetime, we should use various methods, not only to refrain from killing, but also to protect life. We should try our best to engage in animal release whenever possible. If it is reasonable and legal for you to release animals in the current situation, This may be quite troublesome for the time being, but regardless, when it comes to supporting virtuous deeds, as long as we have even a little ability, we should also rely on skillful means to do so. It is very important to practice such virtuous actions. Abstain from all evil speech, engage in all virtuous speech. Guard your speech from major faults and let your words be well tamed. These are quite parallel in structure. This makes them easier to translate. It is also more convenient for us to recite them. Later there is a chapter called the chapter on comparisons. The entire comparison chapter is full of comparisons, so you just really need to change a few specific words in the very middle. There are similar instances later on as well. Here it indeed says that our very own speech. Earlier, the methods for taming the body have already been explained. The method for taming our speech is as follows. To eliminate all evil in our speech, including lying, divisive speech, and so on, we must be diligent. Actually, these are just like what was mentioned earlier. To cut off the very nature and causes of evil speech, including malicious intent that may or may not be outwardly expressed, and so on. Then, practicing virtuous speech is equally important. We speak kind, compassionate, and virtuous words, perhaps by reciting scriptures or offering heartfelt praise to others, and so on. If we do this, what are we protecting? We are protecting our speech, keeping it away from major transgressions. Some people use language to hurl insults online, which is a very serious offense. When you see it, it's truly pitiful. If we truly don't do this, then our speech can indeed be tamed towards goodness. Indeed, in this present day and age, sometimes the negative actions committed by the body are also very pitiable. For example, using some high-tech means to committing acts such as killing or stealing has also become very, very serious actions. Now, in northern Myanmar, various types of telecom fraud are frequently committed. Hundreds or even thousands of people are apprehended at the same time. It also looks very pitiful. In these cases, the negative actions of body, speech, and mind are probably all present. There are also people who frequently slander the three jewels and the law of cause and effect with their speech, even though they themselves lack any profound wisdom. They simply follow what other people say and begin to slander as well. They talk about other people's faults. Although some of us may not be that serious about these matters, we often find ourselves discussing what is right and what is wrong. Among practitioners, this particular phenomenon is also not considered good. Indeed, it very often seems like people especially like to talk about others' faults. This includes the Khenpos or Khenmos in their own class, or whoever else it may be. Especially some people are the type who have always loved to point out others' faults since birth. And they themselves never even realize that this is a wrongdoing. This is also particularly bad. In the Udāna Sūtra, it is also said, always guard your speech. Do not use words to harm others or yourself. Always use speech to benefit both yourself and others. We should always protect our own speech. What kind of protection is this? It certainly doesn't mean that we shouldn't say anything at all, you know. It's not like that. But we should often reflect on our own speech, what should and should not be said. If what I say is harmful to myself or others, I should try my best to remain silent. If it is beneficial to myself and others, I should try my best to say it, and so on. This approach is very important. Abandon all evil actions of the mind and uphold all virtuous actions of the mind. Guard your mind against great faults and let your mind be well tamed and disciplined. This is the same as what was mentioned earlier. That is, we must cut off all mental afflictions related to our own mind, including negative actions such as greed, malice, and various wrong views. Following this, we should then diligently strive to maintain a pure and virtuous mind at all times, a mind of loving kindness, compassion, non-greed, non-anger, and other wholesome states. If we can protect our own mind and keep away from all major evils, especially giving rise to wrong views and hatred, these are particularly serious offenses. In this particular way, the mind truly becomes tamed. Our human mind can be fundamentally and completely tamed. Actually, the mind is quite different from the physical body. The training of the body is limited. This is also thoroughly explained in the profound treasury of valid reasoning. The mind can indeed attain the state of complete omniscience without any limit whatsoever. It can be trained continuously. Moreover, our own mind is truly worth protecting. Why is that indeed so? Because there are so many treasures within the mind. Everyone should understand this. For example, our eyes can only see the outside world, and our ears can only hear external sounds. Apart from this, before we achieve the full integration of the 6 senses, generally, we are unable to do much else. But our mind not only observes the external world, but also looks within itself. When we look within ourselves, we discover that much of the suffering in this world comes from ourselves, and our happiness comes from ourselves. Moreover, the more we discover about ourselves, at that point, so-called great practitioners and great realizers can all truly emerge from within that very essence. So, no matter which of the 5 great treatises we diligently study and delve into, or if we study the Udāna Sūtra, I think everyone should be able to do so. Many of us here have been studying and contemplating for many years. Of course, some of you, compared to others, perhaps they haven't spent as much time listening and contemplating deeply. I've noticed that many people here have been following for 10 or even 20 years. Quite a few have been here over 10 years, but those over 20 years are relatively few. So perhaps age is a limiting factor, such limitations. But the most important thing is not how long you've been here, but whether your mind has truly gained any real understanding. This is very important. If your mind has even a little bit of understanding, that is extremely important. I used to translate, in the Sutra of the Buddha's bequeathed teachings, it also says that if you indulge the mind, you ruin all good deeds. It means that if you can tame your own mind, then anything is truly possible. But if you let your mind run wild, then nothing can be accomplished. If you can control it in one place, nothing is impossible. If you can truly tame your own mind, then truly anything and everything can be successfully achieved. In the past, as it is written in one of the ancient and revered sutras, King Prasenajit at that time, he would always go to very quiet places and contemplate continuously to himself. When he was contemplating, he wondered what things could truly protect himself, and what things indeed could not protect himself at all. If we put it in today's terms, what is the best way to love oneself? And what is the way of not loving oneself? Later, since he was good friends with the Buddha, he went to see the Buddha. He said, I think the really best way to love oneself is yourself, or the best way to protect oneself is to practice virtuous deeds. And the way that least protects oneself is to commit unwholesome deeds. That's what I believe. Then he asked the Buddha, and the Buddha said, yes, you are absolutely right. That's exactly how it is. If you truly love yourself, you should practice virtuous deeds. If you do not love yourself, then you engage in unwholesome actions. If you protect your body, your speech, and also your own mind, then that is actually the best protection you can give yourself. If you do not properly guard your body, speech, and mind, then even if you have 4 truly great armies with powerful elephants, swift cavalry, formidable chariots, and resilient infantry, these 4 magnificent forces will still be of absolutely no use. They cannot truly protect you, no matter how many advanced weapons you have on the surface, like the Navy, Air Force, and Army. If your mind is not tamed, they may not be able to protect you either. Nowadays, many people around the world, in order to protect themselves, conduct all kinds of military exercises and drills. But in reality, when certain conditions arise, many still encounter difficulties. So, as some sutras also say, the mind is very frightening. Things like poisonous snakes, wild beasts, and enemies, these are not actually the most terrifying things. The most frightening is when our mind creates negative karma. If the mind creates negative karma, it leads to ruin. So in our world, people with evil minds, bad hearts, such people bring endless suffering and harm to both themselves and others. Therefore, it is very important to tame our own minds. This is really what this verse is all about. Next then, Liki Nibra Shatpon, Jingpa Nipa Shatpon, Yiki Nipa, Jutpon Yang, Sturzen Damba Kayan Pan, to cease evil actions of the body, to cease evil actions of speech, to cease evil actions of the mind, and to eliminate other faults. This means that body, speech, and mind must all cease evil actions. We must also eliminate other faults. This is just like the 3 monks mentioned earlier. The 3 monks just mentioned, because each of them had evil actions of body, speech, and mind. Later, the Buddha gave them these 3 verses specifically for their situation. After they heard this, they correctly recognized their own shortcomings. Then they said to the Buddha, "We have heard your concise yet profound teachings, and through your consistent and compassionate long-term guidance, we have indeed gained great benefit." They then felt themselves that their understanding in all aspects had significantly improved overall. The Buddha once again recited these 3 verses. The main point is that the body should cease evil actions. The body should refrain from the things we usually do, just as mentioned before, such as killing and so on. All evil actions related to the body should be abandoned. Then the same also applies to speech. Speech includes lying, frivolous talk, harsh words, and so on. All of these evil actions. Then as for the mind, it is also about abandoning all evil actions such as greed, anger, and wrong views. There are also other evil actions to be abandoned. What does other refer to? It refers to those included in other karmic paths. For example, among these, the 10 unwholesome actions are basically called natural misdeeds, which everyone is likely to commit easily. It also includes bodily, verbal, and mental evil actions that violate the vows of individual liberation. And then within the Bodhisattva vows and Vajrayana vows, there are many that are not properly upheld, and some evil actions, the offenses established by the Buddha, must be abandoned. Actually, the Sutra on the results of good and evil karmas says that the 10 unwholesome and 10 wholesome actions already include them all. But in actual reality, some of the more subtle and intricate principles are often not explained in very great detail. All of these can also be included, therefore all of these evil actions should be abandoned. This is also very important for those who practice virtuous deeds. Here it means to commit no evil whatsoever. Previously, the main point was to practice all that is good. If one understands all evil, the causes and effects are not desirable. This should also be what is taught in the Udāna Sutra. One should always contemplate correctly and not commit any wrongdoing. If we truly understand the severity of committing evil, whether from the perspective of either cause or effect, everyone feels that this is not something pleasant or delightful. Committing evil is something extremely repulsive. It's just like how there is no fragrance in impure excrement. The evil karma that is created from beginning to end will never be good or beautiful. If we understand this principle and contemplate it often, then we will develop an aversion to evil and should not commit it. In fact, monastics in a certain sense should truly have no interest in any malevolent actions whatsoever, committed. Moreover, they do not wish to commit them and should not commit them. There is a certain restraint in this regard. But among worldly people, there are 2 particular types. One type especially likes to do evil very much. As long as they are doing evil, they naturally feel a kind of interest. Some individuals are particularly unwilling to practice virtuous and good deeds. This reluctance is also closely related to their own personal karma. This is indeed connected. When it comes to committing evil, the great masters of the past have said this. What are the reasons? Some people, for example, encounter extremely difficult situations, life-threatening danger. In such cases, some evil deeds must be committed out of necessity. However, if deeds are committed, the consequences are not severe. Some evil is committed purely for enjoyment. For example, in the past, in Tibetan areas, it was difficult to be vegetarian. At that time, for many people, their daily sustenance and food were often closely related to meat. If there was absolutely none available, they would truly be extremely hungry. There were such difficulties. But compared to this, nowadays city dwellers, in order to show off and enjoy brief pleasures of taste, then deliberately commence the widespread killing of numerous sentient beings. The karmic consequences of these two actions are also different. Therefore, we should always do our very best to avoid committing evil with our body, our speech, and our mind. This is also an extremely important aspect, because in this particular chapter, as practitioners, we must be vigilant and constantly observe our body, speech, and mind. If there are no special circumstances, like those special times in the past, many great masters, even when facing life-threatening danger, would not kill cattle or take human lives. But nowadays, can we still truly achieve this? Even if you are not in such harmful situations, you should still try your best to avoid evil actions of body, speech, and mind. Of course, for ordinary people, being completely pure is easy to say when we talk about it, but in practice it is actually quite difficult to do. No matter what the circumstances may be, we should respect the profound teachings of the Buddha. And in our own spiritual practice, we should do our very best to abandon evil and cultivate goodness.
Liji gewa namsha ngak gewa parchin sha yuji gewa namsha yang tsatme de jadang dambra sha.
Perform all virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind, and fully cultivate the four immeasurables. When we speak of the body, since this text teaches that we should abandon the three unwholesome actions, here it refers to practicing the three wholesome actions. So with the body, one should refrain from killing and do one's best to save lives and engage in other virtuous acts. With speech, one should strive to avoid lying and instead practice truthful speech, just as it states in our aspiration of Sukhavati, the compendium of training also discusses the virtuous actions we should perform. Bodhisattvas engage in virtuous actions that are guided by even greater compassion. They practice such wholesome and commendable deeds. Then, regarding the mind, this specifically refers to the three wholesome mental actions such as non-greed. On this foundation, one should strive to love all beings and avoid harming them, maintaining such virtuous actions through compassion. In this way, one fully cultivates the four immeasurables, the four immeasurable minds taught in the Mahayana tradition. Is that right? It's not entirely clear, but what is discussed here is that in the Mahayana tradition, we fully possess the aspiration that all beings may obtain happiness and its causes, that all beings be free from suffering and its causes, that they not be separated from such happiness, and that they abide in a state free from hatred and attachment. Remaining constantly in such a state, these are the four immeasurable minds: loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. But the commentary here mainly explains that because our minds are directed toward countless beings, they are called immeasurable. If our body and so forth are only connected to certain special or specific beings, then the virtue generated is also limited and not very apparent. Regarding this phrase from Tianshizai, I looked into it specifically. It mainly says, without desire, all outflows are exhausted. It clearly states that if there is absolutely no desire, then all outflows can be completely eliminated. Looking at the context of the entire sutra and treatises, it seems the four immeasurable minds are not clearly explained here. There are no such commentaries in the Tibetan tradition either. You can look into this when you have time. Perhaps it refers to liberation from suffering and the attainment of happiness for all beings. Whether this interpretation is clear or not, I'm not certain. But here, it might refer to virtuous actions of the body, virtuous actions of speech, and virtuous actions of mind, as well as virtuous actions performed equally by body, speech, and mind. These have immeasurable merit. Could it be explained from this perspective? Everyone can look into this as well. How exactly should this be explained?
The
main point is to practice such virtuous deeds. There is significant merit in this from the perspective of accumulating merit. Perform all virtuous deeds with the body and likewise with speech and mind. In this life and future lives, one will always attain happiness. This mainly comes from the Udāna Varga or similar texts where this is discussed. At that time, the Buddha addressed different beings, sometimes giving detailed and extensive explanations, and sometimes giving brief and simple teachings. Some explanations were neither overly detailed nor excessively general. Such verses were also carefully taught. There are indeed such examples. But the important point is that we should contemplate these significant merits and diligently practice virtuous deeds with the body, speech, and mind. In this way, in this present life, due to the karmic results of virtuous actions, sometimes the results manifest in this very life. They ripen in the present existence. Some may ripen in future lives or many future lives. There are results that mature then as well. In any case, as long as we practice virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind, we will always attain happiness. Always doesn't mean just temporarily. Some contaminated results, as explained in the first chapter of the Bodhicariyavatara, as it states there, are like the fruit of a banana tree. They disappear after a single harvest. But when we speak of what is constant here, we refer to the undefiled merit and results we obtain, which are lasting. They are not conditioned phenomena, but rather the long-term happiness of attaining nirvana. We should attain this kind of lasting happiness. That is the main meaning here. The main thing is that it involves undefiled aspects and should correspond to the wholesome qualities of ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. In the Udāna Sūtra it states, "In the past, one cultivated all virtuous deeds in accordance with ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom." The virtuous deeds practiced in the past were aligned with ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. They don't cause samsara, but bring pure happiness. This means that the virtuous actions we engage in, if they are truly accompanied by meditative concentration, ethical conduct, and wisdom, if they are embraced and supported by these three essential trainings, then they become wholesome roots that lead directly toward ultimate liberation. Today we will still be using Tibetan for the examination. Otherwise, sometimes even I myself can't really tell the difference. If the three trainings are included, it aligns with liberation. You seem a bit nervous. It's okay. We're Tibetan. If we were to use the dialect from the Daofu area for the oral Dharma presentation, we also have translations available here. If we use Gyalrong Tibetan, and if we can't speak our local Tibetan well, or if it's the Gyalrong dialect, some of you can translate. For example, if I use the Gyalrong Tibetan dialect, others who understand Gyalrong can then use our beautiful mother tongue, the Kham dialect, to explain it. Sometimes we speak in Tibetan and sometimes in Chinese. Just now we mentioned the significant text known as the Udāna Sūtra. It's generally understood that this important sutra was translated by the scholar Richeng during the Song dynasty. He discussed many things in it, especially about the proper understanding of cause and effect. When it's convenient for you, you can access it now, right? Take a good look at it. Also, perhaps a few of us here are still reading Richeng's Tibetan commentary, and perhaps some individuals haven't had much opportunity to look at it. Those with good comprehension, I hope everyone will read it. The other day I sent out the electronic version of the commentary. I've already sent it to everyone. We plan to look at that again after some time. It might not be possible this year, but for the chapters below the 12th in the Udāna Sūtra, it would be better for us to refer to the Tibetan version. because the way the commentary explains things is rather unique. This way everyone can have a comprehensive understanding. When I explain it, I might not remember that much myself. Even if I do remember, you might not grasp it all at once. So it's good to read the commentary yourself. That might be the best approach. I can see that some of you are studying quite thoroughly. Others may not be, just listening and trying to understand from the verses alone, which is quite difficult. So, as I mentioned earlier about the virtuous actions of body, speech and mind, these bring happiness both in this life and future lives, and the merit of attaining nirvana. Constantly subduing the body, the compassionate one acts without causing harm. He heads toward the deathless state, and wherever he goes, there is no sorrow at all. It appears there was a Brahmin in this location. This individual was known by the name Chiuyunduo, and he was also called Yujishi. We can refer to him as Yujishi. He went to see the Buddha and said, "I practice the principle of non-harming conduct in my life. However, some people kill yaks and water buffaloes, claiming that this violent act is actually a virtuous deed and will lead to rebirth in a good realm. I don't believe this at all. Buddha, please tell me, what is the truth of this matter?" At that time, the Buddha said, "As long as it harms beings, it is not a wholesome route. Only non-harming is truly virtuous and genuinely commendable." Then he recited the following 4 verses. There were also some dedicated monks at that time who practiced virtuous deeds. And then the group of 6 monks began to obstruct them and engaged in unwholesome actions themselves. In response to this, the Buddha spoke the following 4 verses. The literal meaning today is quite straightforward. If we can finish explaining this entire chapter, that would be much better. The commentary also seems quite simple. I find it simple, and you probably find it even simpler. Constantly restraining the body, the compassionate one practices non-harming. He heads toward the deathless state, and wherever he goes, he is free from sorrow. The following mainly discusses non-harming, having a body free from sorrow, with self-restraint, and so on. First, there is restraint of the body, restraint of speech, and then restraint of mind. This is the same as what was mentioned earlier. There is a summary at the end. First, we constantly restrain or control our actions. For example, through meditation or by upholding the vows of individual liberation. And if one's realization is at a higher level, one can use undefiled wisdom to achieve restraint of the body. This mainly refers to the practice of the compassionate one and the conduct of non-harming. The compassionate one refers to thapa. In the commentary, thapa is explained as being free from attachment, without greed, and later it mentions the conduct of non-harming. This means not being attached to anything whatsoever. As for the conduct of non-harming, it includes not using any kind of sticks or weapons to beat beings. None of these things are present, because, as the Buddha's teachings originally state, just as explained in the 400 stanzas on the middle way, his only path is non-harming, and it is also conduct that benefits others. So, for such a person, what is the result of this non-harming and altruistic conduct? In the future, they will move toward the deathless state, to the place of deathlessness. This means attaining complete nirvana without remainder. So when one reaches the deathless place, wherever they go, there is no sorrow. When they attain this truly deathless ultimate state, when they achieve the fruit of deathlessness, all these profound sufferings completely vanish and dissipate. There is no sorrow, no pain, no distress. Consequently, there is a pervasive sense of happiness and peace. There will be no burning or torment. Even the names of these sufferings do not exist there. Therefore, for those who wish to discipline their bodies, both in this life and the next, they will truly attain such great happiness. When it comes to practicing virtuous deeds, Actually, in Tibetan Buddhist teachings in Heart Instructions of Padmasambhava, there is a section at the end listing 21 kinds of conduct. Among these are many practices commonly observed in Tibetan areas, including turning prayer wheels, circumambulation, and prostrating with the entire body. All these virtuous practices are included. So, for some of us, if we have difficulties understanding the Dharma in our hearts or face challenges in various aspects, then holding a mala and circumambulating with the body, regularly cultivating these habits is extremely important. Otherwise, some young people who engage in listening, contemplation, and practice may have a problem in this regard. What kind of problem? For example, when it comes to debate on Buddhist logic or actual practice of Madhyamaka, they might be quite skilled in these areas, but when it comes to bodily and verbal conduct, their merit is relatively lacking. They don't recite mantras even when holding a mala. I'm not sure if you've recited the mantras I recently asked everyone to do. And as for physical practice, some of our students nowadays, if they meet a truly dedicated good teacher, will do prostrations every morning when they wake up and also do prostrations before going to bed at night. They have developed very good physical habits. On the other hand, some of us who study the 5 great treatises seem to lack this practice. Before going to bed at night, they just look at their phones and play around a bit, then go straight to sleep. They don't even turn off their phones before sleeping. When they wake up in the morning, there's no chanting of sutras, no prostrations, no recitation of scriptures at all. The very first thing they do is check their phone. Then they often remain half awake in a daze. At most, they might glance at their class schedule. So this way of studying has become very ordinary. Generally, the content of worldly studies nowadays might be worlds apart from what we study in the 5 great treatises. There's a vast difference between the two, but in terms of our behavior, it seems our own habits appear as if we are swimming in the vast ocean of Dharma, but in reality, our minds receive no nourishment at all. This carries a certain significant risk. Everyone should also examine whether you are truly a practitioner. If you are a practitioner, nowadays there are some students and teachers who, although they wear ordinary lay clothes, their minds are very much in accord with the proper conduct of spiritual practice. They are aligned with it. In this way, as true practitioners, let us see how things are. I am especially concerned about those who love to study theory. Originally, they were like this in school. Then, when they come to a Buddhist center, they still haven't changed their old habits at all. In the past, when we had some exams here, some elder lamas, Khenpos and Khenmos all had different opinions. What were their differing opinions? At that time, we said maybe it's best for everyone to take an exam. That way, at least if you've attended school, your overall educational level will be a bit higher. If you are entirely self-taught, your academic level might not be that high. But some people said that because these individuals have spent half their lives in the bustling city or in worldly schools for about 10 or 20 years now, when they enter the monastic community, they are quite unruly. It's best not to accept these people. We should accept more traditional practitioners instead. So what they say is not without reason. Because basically, half of a person's life is spent mingling in the secular world, immersed in all kinds of greed, anger, and ignorance. So now, perhaps suddenly, even though their physical body, outward clothing, and many other aspects have undergone noticeable changes, their mind may still be stuck in their old, ingrained habits and hasn't transformed yet. So the physical body should truly become the body of a dedicated practitioner. This is very important. Otherwise, even among monastics, there are some with poor conduct, including the notable case of the 6 bhikkhu groups, which is representative in many ways. During the Buddha's time, there were the 6 bhikkhu groups. Now there are certainly even more, perhaps 3 times 6 makes 18 and so on. So it's quite hard to say, right? Those who always restrain their speech, the compassionate ones who act without harm, they head toward the deathless state, and wherever they go, they are free from worry. This follows the same logic as before. If we constantly restrain our speech, in terms of how we speak, such a compassionate person, a practitioner free from greed and harmful actions, can gradually move toward the deathless state, steadily progressing toward true nirvana. If he reaches that state, then his mind will be completely free from all afflictions and sorrow. None of these will exist. Therefore, our speech must also be constantly restrained. Indeed, within the Vinaya, there are methods for restraining speech according to the precepts. Not only should we restrain ourselves, but we should also practice virtuous deeds. Whether reciting mantras, chanting sutras, or simply speaking kindly in daily life. Ensuring that our speech in all aspects is proper and in accordance with the Dharma. Regulating our speech in this way is very important. Actually, if you want to observe a person, you do so by watching their speech and actions. It's very difficult to observe their mind directly. Therefore, as Mipham Rinpoche said, much of the hatred and affection in this world is caused by speech. Speech is very important. If you become a truly good person, when you speak in front of others, they can immediately tell. If you become a bad person by saying a few words, others can immediately tell. Your inner wisdom is not visible to others. It is through your speech that people observe you. Some people, I have met scholars in the past within a short time, could accurately discern a person's innermost thoughts, their specific interests, and their precise level of understanding, all simply by listening. So speech is extremely important in human communication. If we can truly tame our speech and attain the state of deathlessness, we ourselves will be free from suffering, and through our speech we can also benefit countless beings.
Stagda yodna dambi shir taban sewa me pa yi. Tenan chimida nenro yang gangda sonagam nyan meda.
Constantly taming the mind, the compassionate one acts without harm. Such a person moves toward the deathless state, and wherever he goes, there is no sorrow. Now, regarding the mind should also be constantly tamed. Without attachment, without harmful actions, if that's the case, such a person can truly move toward the ultimate deathless state of nirvana, and once he arrives there, wherever he goes, there will be no sorrow in his mind. Because, as mentioned earlier, there is no sorrow caused by the body, nor sorrow caused by speech, and here there is no sorrow caused by the mind. Or, with our body, speech, and mind, we can simultaneously engage in virtuous actions. For example, reciting Avalokiteshvara's mantra with our mouth, holding an Avalokiteshvara prayer wheel in our hand, and praying to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva in our heart. Body, speech, and mind can all engage in virtuous actions at the same time. Sometimes looking at the computer can be a bit straining on the eyes. Make good use of this physical body, which is a temporary combination of the 5 aggregates, as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will develop many problems. We just talked about the discipline of speech. The meaning is the same. If we practice virtuous actions without negligence, then nirvana will not be far away. If one is free from negligence, one attains the deathless state. This should be from the Sutra of Mindfulness of the True Dharma. By practicing without negligence, one draws near to nirvana. If we are not negligent, we draw near to nirvana. So in terms of body, speech, and mind, as we mentioned earlier, one aspect is being diligent and not negligent. But what should we do with this diligence? Simply doing nothing is not enough. Not being negligent means we must practice virtuous deeds. For many of us, if we rely on someone who is a good practitioner with high moral character, then we ourselves may, in a short time, become someone who practices well. Unless Within our mental continuum, afflictions are deep-rooted. People are capable of change. Nowadays, many people around the world, good people become bad and bad people become good, all because of education. Except for a very few individuals, everyone changes through education. So Buddhism is also a form of education. Without education, just having the status of a monastic or having a monastery, these are merely the outward forms of Buddhism, not very important. Therefore, for all of us here, no matter what your current status is, in the future, on one hand, we should use our short lives for virtuous deeds and avoid associating with those who do evil. If you don't, you may quickly become corrupted in the process. This is something you must pay attention to. Secondly, if you have the ability and opportunity during your lifetime, you should aspire to benefit sentient beings, because each of us cannot stay in one place for long. And even if you want to stay in one place for long, it's impossible. In the past, when I had many followers around me, I mentioned this point. Later on, sometimes when I see some people say they miss Larung, I tell them we miss all of you too. In reality, we all face the truth of impermanence. No matter what happens, we must accept this. We are all human with emotions and desires. It's impossible for anyone to have no feelings at all. Some individuals have studied and communicated together for many years, and when impermanence suddenly occurs, it has an impact. But we need to pull ourselves together and face reality and impermanence. Then we should keep listening, contemplating, and practicing the teachings. Some people have told me, you are all so happy, but what about us? And I have told some people we are not that happy either. It's like I used to be someone who was successful in business, but later I suddenly found myself working in a small restaurant, feeling like an employee there, and everyone around me was a stranger. So I had to adapt all over again. I saw many people from the past, also in different places, facing their own situations, but this too is impermanent. However, we cannot, because of such a small matter, lose what is most meaningful to us, listening, contemplating, practicing, and spreading the Dharma to benefit beings. This is something we must persist in with strength and resolve. If we do so, we can face many things. Of course, looking at the current situation, each and every one of us who once had the experience of staying at Larungar, this counts as something from the past. Now, we should focus on benefiting sentient beings out in the world. There is no need for any fantasies. Otherwise, it may bring harm to both ourselves and others. Among us here, there are lamas and nuns, and I hope that in the future you will not regard Larungar as your permanent place of residence. Instead, however many years you have spent here, you should bring the Dharma back to your own places. During the years you have in this life, do some meaningful things for the people around you. Oh, not much. There's still time later. Today I expressed that it is important to use one's time well. I believe I am good at managing my schedule. I also talked about this yesterday. We need to learn how to manage our time in the future. Sometimes we shouldn't be too long-winded, whether it's discussing things with each other or having meetings or whatever it is. Time is precious. This includes giving lectures, tutoring, and many other things. We really need to have a good sense of time. Overall, at this moment, things are fine right now. I also mentioned this yesterday when talking about the oral exam. You have about 5 minutes for the oral exam. How much can you say in 5 minutes? If you have 10 minutes, then you have 10 minutes. When we do tutoring, we also start by speaking first. One gets 5 minutes, another gets 5 minutes. This way might be better. If someone speaks well, I want to hear more from them. Let them talk more. But if they don't speak well, I just want them to finish as soon as possible. Everyone experiences this. So, it's important for all of us to have a good sense of time. We have just finished talking about body, speech, and mind. Next, let's talk about this.
Tamba namji livdamja, tamba namji ngakjangdam, tamba namji yudamja, tamba gunda damshi na dedang chimido nenjo yang gangda songna yang nyan met.
Those who are steadfast discipline their bodies, speech, and minds. They discipline everything. They move toward deathlessness, and wherever they go, there is no sorrow. This is from the case we just discussed, the 4th verse. Here, steadfast refers to the wise. The commentary also refers to the wise. These steadfast people are those with wisdom. They use the methods mentioned earlier to discipline their physical bodies. The steadfast individuals have methods to discipline their 5 physical senses, and then they begin to discipline their speech. The steadfast, the wise, also discipline their minds. In fact, foolish individuals cannot discipline their body, their speech, or their mind at all. When fools are in front of others, they have no control over their bodies. Their speech is also unrestrained. They just talk on and on. They don't speak when they should, and speak when they shouldn't, like this. As for the mind, even more out of control. Among all forms of discipline, the mind is the hardest to control, but the wise can discipline all of these. Moreover, the steadfast can discipline everything. They can control body, speech, and mind completely. The commentary also explains this. For example, if one can discipline the body and speech, that is a good level of steadfastness. If someone can discipline all 3, that's excellent, the best discipline. This means body, speech, and mind. Take, for example, the venerable monk Ma Sheng from the past. His body, speech, and mind were all gentle and peaceful. There are higher, middle, and lower levels of this. Some people may be able to control their bodies, but not their speech. Their body doesn't go anywhere. They remain composed, but their speech, chattering on and on, never stopping, always talking. Some people can manage both body and speech, but their minds are always running wild, chaotic, a whirlwind of thoughts and ideas. We often call this a scattered mind. There are people like this too. Some individuals can discipline their body, speech, and mind very well. This is the best situation. Among the great, medium, and small paths of accumulation, those who can discipline all aspects belong to the great path of accumulation. Such people move toward the state of deathlessness, and wherever they go, they will have no worries. That is the meaning here. To discipline the body is good. To discipline the speech is good. To discipline the mind is good. If all are disciplined, it is good. This mainly refers to the disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha at that time. They had certain tendencies within themselves, such as attachment. They become attached to things. Some individuals were attached to the pleasures of this world and accumulated negative karma. They did not apply themselves to virtuous practices. If they did even a little good, they would feel satisfied. So, for these people, the Buddha taught 3 verses. However, in our version here, there may be only 2.5 verses. The following one could be considered half a case study. Whether it is a case study or not, in any case, there were some bhikshus, some monastics, who had the afflictions of attachment just mentioned, those same afflictions. They accumulated negative karma and were not diligent in virtuous practices and were content with these behaviors. Some say that these teachings were given to the 5 bhikshus. There are such accounts as well. So, the first verse goes like this: to discipline the body is good. What this means is, through observing the precepts, if the body is disciplined, that is the best. It is beneficial both in this life and in future lives. If you can discipline your body, this brings great merit, both now and in the future. The good here means the very best. That's the idea. And to discipline one's speech is also very good, because if your speech is disciplined, that is also the best in our human world. And to discipline the mind is good. If the mind is disciplined, that too is the best. So, if all 3, body, speech, and mind, if you can discipline all 3 of these aspects, that is very good. To God the body is good indeed, and to God speech is also good. This is also taught in the Vinaya Sutra of the Sarvastivada school. It is mentioned there as well. To guard the mind is good indeed. To guard all completely is the best. If our body is virtuous, that is good indeed. If our speech is well guarded, that is also good indeed. If our mind is well guarded, that is good indeed. If we can guard all of them well, then this is the very best. So in this way, in the Vinaya Sutra, there are also similar teachings, aren't there? The point is that it is very good for us to discipline our body, speech, and mind. But some practitioners are usually very good at self-discipline. But when something happens, they can't control themselves at all, right? Usually practitioners are, their bodies are well disciplined, very calm, and their speech is also not doing any evil, practicing all good deeds, very good. The heart is also very good. But the most troublesome thing is when you are in a bad mood or encounter something. The extensive biography of Milarepa also talks about this. At that time, Rechungpa and Milarepa lived in one place. One person became displeased with them. They couldn't stand it anymore. Later, he went to Milarepa to engage in a debate. During the debate, that person seems unable to win the argument against Milarepa. As for him, although he wasn't skilled in logic, he had no obstacles in understanding these profound meanings. When this person couldn't win the debate, he impulsively grabbed a handful of ash and threw it in Milarepa's face. At that moment, Milarepa did not become angry. Instead, he simply wiped the ash off his face a little bit. At this point, Rechungpa started to get angry. He himself was still. Rechungpa was also considered to have good practice, right? In the biography, especially just after he went to India, he's also a bit arrogant. But he is proficient in exoteric and esoteric Buddhism, so he is very powerful. He couldn't stand it. He treated Milarepa like this. He stood up and prepared to hit him. The fight begins. When fighting, Milarepa told us not to get angry. Let him sit down, sit down. Then we often say what we usually say verbally in our spoken words. We say that they are practitioners who eat well and dress well. When encountering negative conditions, they become just ordinary people. So, as we mentioned earlier, the complete taming of our body, speech and mind, usually when studying and contemplating in a quiet place, when by the side of the Guru and Dharma friends, it's as if their eyes are barely open, calm, with body, speech and mind all very tranquil. Even when walking, they move very slowly, in a proper and disciplined manner. But when they encounter situations involving greed, anger or ignorance, their previous conduct can easily vanish without a trace. Therefore, the taming of body, speech and mind is not just about outward appearance. If one can tame them from within, then everything else becomes much easier. This is the first verse. Now the second and third verses are
Yirnam lakdam te liki maki vatar shedma sha lelam sambo ndatak namjana changchong somba lamna tobar nir.
The universally tamed bhikshu, the bhikshu who has tamed body, speech and mind in all aspects, the universally tamed bhikshu is freed from all suffering, guarding one's speech, skillfully taming the mind, and refraining from unwholesome bodily actions. By purifying these three actions, one attains the path of the sages. Here the example is also given using the bhikshu as a model, whether it is a bhikshu who has tamed body, speech and mind, or a practitioner in general. As long as one tames these, one can be liberated from sufferings of samsara. Taming them is all. At present we are unable to tame them. If we could tame them and control our sense faculties, we would be able to free ourselves from all suffering. What kinds of suffering can be overcome and how do we tame them? First, by guarding our words and speech. Then skillfully taming the mind. After that, the body will not engage in unwholesome actions. In other words, body, speech, and mind, as mentioned before, should all be skillfully tamed. In this way, one purifies these three actions. Purification means cutting off all unwholesome actions. After we have studied this principle, we will no longer create the three types of actions of body, speech, and mind, these three actions. The path of purifying the three actions, there is a path, but the meaning is the same. It should be the path of purifying the three actions. The path of the three actions refers to what was mentioned earlier, body, speech, and mind. Then one attains the path of the sages and attains the realization that the Buddha himself achieved, because the path of the sages, the realization and enlightenment attained by the Buddha, this path, this term is also often used. So everything above has been explained, the entire process of taming the body, speech, and mind. The above primarily discusses the chapter on virtuous conduct. Practicing virtuous actions mainly involves taming body, speech, and mind. If body, speech, and mind are tamed, one can also attain the corresponding fruition. End of chapter 7.
Sonandai tamsa thobaya tonani dhamma pasi jirgana jirano chupai chupun solen droja bandangara badna sadarda bandangara badna sadarda Bandangara Badma Sadarda